double check just to make sure everything was good. I was a little misguided, so okay, but we're good. And George, we are on. We are on the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. Uh, Thank you again, Mr. Haymaker, for taking the time to speak with me. And guys, as always, during this interview, if you guys have any questions, please, write them down. Let me know, and I'll ask Mr. George Haymaker here or myself. If it's directed to me, I will politely answer the questions. So, George, welcome to the podcast, my brother.
Hey, thanks, Mark. I didn't realize we were on live.
No, it didn't give me any detection that we were, so, but that's okay. We're
All
good.
right.
We're good.
Very good. Nice to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. George, you are a transformational neuroscience coach. Break down what that means.
Yeah. Um, the larger framework for what I do is all around brain performance. And so we have this thing between our ears that, weighs 2 to 3 pounds. But it runs every system in our body. It works 24/7, and we rely on it for all of our success, happiness, and fulfillment. And it'd be one thing if the brain were fixed and, we were all given great levels of performance. Think of it like an operating system, like your computer. But it's not fixed, and it experiences a whole range of performance levels. And we have everything to do with that performance level, what the level that we can achieve and that we are achieving. And so there's all kinds of things we can do with our lifestyle to supply the brain with resources that it needs to function well. There's all kinds of strategies that we can use to spend those resources wisely and efficiently during each day. And then, as we know, the brain produces or generates our mental experience, what happens in our minds. And we've all experienced times when that mental experience is not helpful or uncomfortable, causing us friction and discomfort. And that is the result of patterns that we program into the brain over our lifetime as a result of all of our experiences in life. And the brain uses those patterns and refers to them and references them to bring forward our current mental experience every moment. So it's basically like a computer has files and the brain has files, and it goes and looks at all those past experiences, those thought, emotional, and behavioral patterns, and brings the one forward into the present that it believes is most like what we are currently experiencing. So the bottom line is that if our mental experience is not helpful, we're experiencing discomfort, we can change those patterns in the brain. We can rewire the brain. And so that's what I mean by transformation, is that we can transform what the mental experience that the brain is producing from what it is now to what we would like it to be in the future. And that is absolutely possible. It's science-backed, and that's the work I do with clients.
Okay. How long have you been doing this practice?
Well, my business has been established and running for 4+ years now. But I've been working in the field of neuroscience as a result of my own personal mental health experience for about 13 years now. So if you'd like me to get into my story, I'm more than happy to do that.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So for many years, I was a businessman, an entrepreneur, had some small to medium-sized businesses, moderately to pretty successful. But underneath it all, I was struggling mentally. I didn't understand how my brain worked. I didn't much care. I just expected it to perform like most people do. And I was highly activated, highly stressed out all the time, partly as a result of my business, but also just partly as a result of how I was brought up. I was uncomfortable in my own skin. And so that caused a lot of mental friction or turmoil, a lot of anxiety. And I didn't know how to deal with it. And so over time, I learned to cope with it using alcohol and drugs. Ultimately, it was alcohol and pain pills that caused me to get very addicted. And 13 years ago, I hit a hard bottom and ended up going into rehab. And I took that moment to realize that my life was not working well, and that I needed to try something completely different. Otherwise, I wasn't going to make it. And so that's when I decided to depart from everything I had known and the way I had lived life and try something completely new. And so I dove deep into my brain to understand how it worked, how it had become addicted, and what was I going to be able to do with it to be able to change mentally. And so yeah, so that's been the process over 13 years. I went back to school. I got a degree in neuroscience or brain science, and I used myself as my own case study. Everything I learned, I tried on myself, and my life began to improve so much that I knew that this is what I had to do for the rest of my life, is to help other people understand how their brains work and how to live more optimal, fulfilling, happy, successful lives, all based on a brain that is performing optimally and that is meeting their needs with all the patterns that they need to meet their needs efficiently. So anyway, that's how I got into it, and I'm so happy that all that happened to me in my life. It was painful at the time. I didn't know what would come out of it, but here I sit 13 years later, and I'm so glad it happened. I'm so grateful because I never would have changed without those things happening to me.
Mm, mm. And I read through your bio, George, and you mentioned that you you were taking up to 50 pills and you drank 2 bottles of vodka a day.
Yeah, that was at the end. I couldn't go more than an hour, sleeping an hour without waking up, throwing up, and
Jeez.
having to consume more just to get my body to stop shaking. I was going into withdrawals constantly. And so, yeah, I just was on it, taken over my life. Um, I had to keep using just to feel what I would call normal. I wasn't getting high anymore.
Mm,
And it was just to really calm my system down to keep it from going into complete withdrawal.
right.
And so that I knew then at that time, and my stomach was just really upset all the time, constant constipation because of the pills. I just felt like crap.
Mm,
It was just horrible. And so I knew that the end was there. There was nothing. I had to either die or change. And I thought about both. And I decided that I would reach deep and try hard to figure this out. And that's what I did. And, it was hard. Started off in rehab and then AA, had a good sponsor, but it was day by day,
yeah.
hoping that life would get better. But I just took an active role in my recovery, learning as much as I could and trying to figure this out. And, if you do put enough good days together, doing the right things, then eventually you start to come out the other side
Yeah.
and life begins to improve.
Indeed, brother. Indeed. Well, I'm glad it did improve for you, for real.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because maybe we won't be having this conversation.
Yeah. It was nip and tuck there for a while.
Man, hey. So could you say that that was your rock bottom
Oh yeah.
during that time?
Yeah. I took a picture of myself. Um, my wife had left me. She had taken our dogs. So I was all alone. Um, you know, I was all alone anyway, just because when you're in addiction, um, you're hostage to the drugs and the alcohol. You don't have a life.
Mm.
And so yeah, I took a picture of myself and I still have it and look at it periodically, because I wanted to remember what it was like. And so that day that I took the picture, I guess, was my rock bottom, which is what it takes a lot of times for people to change. They have to wait for the consequences to be really intense before they will make change. And part of that is the way the brain is designed. The way the brain is designed is it's not designed to want to change. It's designed to try to keep you alive moment to moment, using the patterns that it already knows, because it knows that those patterns will keep you alive. So it wants to keep using them. When you introduce a bold new idea to yourself that is different than anything else you've done, which we call change, the brain automatically starts to resist it. And we've all experienced that, right? When we think about going on a diet, uh, going to the gym more, whatever it is, we feel this resistance. And that is the brain basically telling you, signaling to you that it's not sure that that's a good idea, because it doesn't know what that is all about. It doesn't know if it's safe, rewarding, how much it's going to cost metabolically. And so it automatically resists anything that's new and different. And so what we need to do as the person is understand that about our brain, that it's automatically going to resist because that's the way it's designed.
Okay.
And then we have to rise above it through willpower and commitment to then teach the brain gradually, gently, through exposure, through evidence, that this new thing that we wanted to do is in fact safe, is in fact rewarding, is in fact low cost metabolically. So we need to give it evidence that this is going to be okay, very gradually, small doses, so that over time the brain begins to learn that this pattern's not so bad that we're trying to move into. And then if we work in the process long enough, the brain will begin to release its resistance entirely and begin to want to prefer the new pattern, because, like, let's say we want to lose weight. As we begin to lose weight, the brain experiences that, and it likes how we look, it likes how we feel, it likes the fact that we have more energy. So it begins to read the tea leaves and say, hey, there's a lot of things about this that are good. I'm going to stop resisting because this pattern actually works better, and it's making you happier and more fulfilled and meeting your needs better. So let's go do this. Not so I'm going to actually give you dopamine and endorphins, um, because this experience is a good one. And so then when we get the endorphins and dopamine, that is the incentive to want to do it even more. We get more motivated because we want to experience more and more of it. And so that's kind of the way that, brain change works
Mm.
at a high level.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. Um, so you said, well, you talk about addictions and rewiring your brain. Uh, you mentioned in your bio too that, and I wrote it down, so I'll just repeat what you wrote. Addiction is a malfunctioning of the reward pathways in the brain, not a failure of willpower. Uh, I love that, by the way. So break that down for me.
Sure. Well, obviously, you know, every time that we would put a drug in our mouth or uh, drink some alcohol, it appears to be a choice, right? That we are actually reaching for it and putting it in our system. So, in that sense, I guess you could say there's a choice in it. And, it could be a matter of willpower. If you don't want to do it, then don't do it, right?
Mhm.
However, what happens is, um, the the reward network of the brain responds to feel good chemicals, so like dopamine, And dopamine is a motivation chemical. It's when the brain wants to do something, is motivated by it, it will release dopamine that gives us the motivation to want to go do something. So we were that's built into the brain as a reward mechanism for initially, based on how we were created as reward for eating good meals, for having romantic sex with our significant others, to have babies. So that's why we get feel good chemicals when we do those things, is because we need to eat and have babies in order for the species to continue. So that's what was built into us. Okay. So what happens though is that we're given a certain amount of dopamine for each of those pleasurable experiences. And that dopamine rises gradually and then recedes gradually. Okay. The thing about alcohol and drugs, and there's only a certain amount of it. Okay. It peaks out at a certain level. The thing about alcohol and drugs is they give us dopamine far in excess of any of those natural life pleasures. So some of the highest dopamine you can get from natural life pleasures would be exercising, having sex, having a great meal. But when you start doing things even like drinking and smoking cigarettes, or all the way up to meth, you get anywhere from 2 to 10 times as much dopamine motivation, as well as endorphins, the pleasure chemicals, which are kind of like human opioids. You get 2 to 10 times more pleasure doing that from those addictive drugs and beverages, or even gambling and shopping and things like that. You get far more dopamine from that than you can get from any natural life pleasure. So if the reward system is based on pursuing the things it gets the greatest reward from, and you have introduced to it artificial substances that give it more pleasure than anything it can find in life, what do you think the brain's going to want to do? Yeah. It's going to want the drugs and the alcohol. And so that's what happens, is that the brain starts to get used to these higher levels of dopamine, and it doesn't want anything else besides that. And because there's so much dopamine, it's more than the brain was designed to handle. The plumbing, so to speak, the neural infrastructure of the brain begins to malfunction because it's getting so much dopamine that it wasn't designed to handle that much. It's like taking a fire hose to your backyard and watering your plants with a fire hose. It'll just destroy the plants. And so over time, our brain stops producing dopamine as much. The plumbing begins to fail, and we need to do more and more of the drug or the alcohol in order to have anywhere near the same feeling. And it stops producing any dopamine for any natural life pleasure. And so the only thing we're ever motivated by at the end is the drug or the alcohol. And it ends up just being to feel normal, not to even get high. And so that's how it takes over our life. So it's a malfunctioning of the reward network of the brain in the ways that I just described.
Okay. And how long does it take to rewire your thinking?
Well, so if you're talking about addiction, so there's two components. One is the addiction itself to the substance. Mm-hmm. And then very few of us get addicted to something for the hell of it. We don't like say, hey, I want to be an addict, right? It's always usually because we're coping with something and we don't know how else to cope with it. And so a lot of people that have uncomfortable mental experience, high levels of anxiety, highly activated nervous systems, they've been through difficult times, and they constantly see threat in the world. Their brain is just threatened all the time, or they're not getting their needs met. They're just activated. And think about, we all know what an activated nervous system feels like, or being stressed out. It's not comfortable, right? Nobody wants to stay that way. Yeah. And so what happens is the brain starts to look for any way it knows possible to bring relief, because the brain's job is to keep you stable and level in homeostasis. Mm-hmm. So So once you teach the brain that alcohol and drugs work well, and it compares it to anything else it knows and doesn't find anything else that works as well, it's going to want to use the alcohol and the drugs. And so it keeps giving you cravings because that's what it knows works well. So one of the issues is getting the reward network of the brain reprogrammed so that it starts getting rewarded, experiencing dopamine and endorphins off of natural life pleasures again. And that takes time. So you're looking at probably 90 days. You're looking at 30 days before all the physical addictive symptoms are out of your system. But then there's an ongoing dependency, psychological part of it that lasts for another 60 days or longer, depending on how deep the addiction was. So that's that part. Now we have to examine the underlying mental patterns, the things that make us uncomfortable in the first place, that cause us to want to use drugs in the first place. And then those have to be rewired. And so I work with people for like 90 days. And by the time we're done working together, the patterns have been rewired. They are now thinking differently. They know how their brain works. They know how to supply their brain, take care of it with the right resources, which means sleeping correctly, exercising, diet, nutrition, how to recover during the day periodically so the brain can reset. There's a whole strategy that goes into living your life in a way that supports your brain. And then, and so, you know, you have to be in it and working at it constantly. The brain doesn't just change because you want it to. It changes because you work with it, train it daily for a period of time until you teach it like anything else that you would train. And it begins to learn that this is the new and different way that you want to proceed with life. And it begins to experience the fact that this new way, it turns out to be better than the way that you taught it previously. And then once it has enough exposure to it and it agrees that this is better, then it begins to let go of the past and create the future. But you have to stay with it long enough and give the brain enough evidence repeatedly for it to make that switch, make that transformation. Okay. I mean, if you think about how long I lived my life the way it was, how long some people build up these old patterns that aren't helpful,
Mhm.
to think that you can just in a day or a week change all of that is just not realistic. Doesn't even make any sense. And so we have to be prepared to put some time and effort into it and help the brain along,
Mhm.
you know, because the brain's just trying to do the best it can. And so we have to work with it for a period of time repeatedly and give it enough exposure that has meaning and reward and shows safety, that it begins to you know, leave the past and begin to evolve into the future.
Yeah, yeah, I understand.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Which leads me to ask this question. You know, certain people don't want to change. You know, they're stuck in where they are and they're comfortable in it, if I can even say that. So, a person in your line of work, George, how can you change people who have, I guess, accepted things as how it is for them?
I can't.
Mm,
Can't.
mm,
Um, it's because, let's go back just briefly to what I mentioned earlier. The brain is designed to not want to change. And so
mm-hmm,
that is that person hearing their brain talk, saying, I don't want to change, and giving into it. Okay. So what it would require is the person themselves, and I'm using this metaphorically because we know that our brain and our brain and us are coupled together, but it really helps to kind of separate yourself away from your brain, think about how it's designed and what it's trying to do, and then how you can make it become something different. And so what it requires is us, or actually it's a part of the brain, the conscious part of the brain, to say to the part of the brain that has already been programmed, like the default mode network with all where all the habits live. So the front part of the brain is talking to the back part of the brain saying, hey, I know that you're comfortable living the life that you're living, but you know, I really, really, really do not want to live the rest of my life like this. And so it requires that front part of the brain to bring the back part of the brain along a little bit, kicking and screaming at the beginning through willpower and commitment and fortitude and perseverance, because that person decides that who they are is not who they want to be. And so once they make that decision that they're willing to do whatever it takes to change, because either they just don't want to be that person that they've been, or the consequences are like super high. Their spouses left them, their kids won't talk to them, they killed somebody in a drunk driving accident. They can't even get out of bed because they're so addicted, or whatever it is. They've lost all their money, whatever. Okay, so we can wait until then, and then it's a little easier to change because life has gotten so shitty that we will do whatever it takes to change. Or somewhere along the way, we can say, you know, I want to change because I just want to be better. And so at that point, that's the decision that we know it's going to be a little hard at the beginning, but working through it, here's how your brain works, here's what you need to do to help it change. That's where all the my work comes in handy, is because then it gives people a clear roadmap as to what they're up against and what they're going to have to go through to get there. It's when you don't know the path, when you don't know what to do and how to do it and how long it's going to take, that only adds to the overwhelm. It only tells the brain, holy mackerel, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know any of it. That just sounds overwhelming to me, so I'm not going to do any of it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it requires somebody that has to come looking to want to change, no matter the reason. They have to want to change, and then it can be done.
You're right. You're right. Because I remember having conversations with, I used to work as a corrections officer,
Right.
and during my tenure there, you know, I had many a conversation with many people for many different reasons, but the ones who were in for AODA related crimes and you know, admitting that they were addicts, I do recall some conversations in that they were glad that they were locked up, because I mean, I like I said, I remember them telling me, it's like, I know that if I was still out there, I would not be good. So me being here is a blessing.
Yep.
And I would ask, well, what are you planning on doing when you get out? Because you do have an expiration date here at this facility. So what is your game plan, bro? You know, and some of them would tell, you know, they will always say, well, you know, I'll probably just go through a 12-step program or blah blah blah, and some of them will eventually come back. One guy, George, I remember, he got released. He came back 24 hours later.
On his own, you mean? He didn't even commit a crime,
Yeah,
or
he did. He got drunk and he crashed out at a party. He just started doing all kinds of crazy shit, and he ended up back in jail. He
yeah.
was out on probation,
Okay.
but he went
Yeah.
out and got smashed, and he crashed out at a party. He wigged out. He was back the next day. So let's say he left Tuesday afternoon. He came back Wednesday afternoon.
So that shows you that, and that's the insidious thing about addiction is, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, when you stop using, you could take 10 years, 20 years away from it. But if you started to use again, you would end up right back to where you left off. There is
Mm,
no go back to jail, get out of jail free card. There's no, like, you would hope maybe in a weird way, that you could start all over again, right? It would be like the first time you ever got drunk, but it's not that way.
Yeah.
And so the problem with, being in prison is, and I don't know it well, so I can't, I'm going to conjecture here, but if you're not getting the help where you can actually change what's causing you to be addicted in the first place with your underlying mental patterns, the way that your mind works, like that, if that doesn't change, then you're still uncomfortable and you haven't recreated a new life that's meaningful and rewarding. And so you get out and you're back into the world, the same context in which you used to get drunk and high, and you haven't rebuilt your life and you don't know what to do when you get out. And so your brain automatically says, oh, okay, we're back in the same environment that we were a while back. I haven't learned anything new. So I'm just going to tell you what to do that you were doing the last time you were here. And so it's like you're just picking up right where you left off. And so that's where rehabilitation would work best, is if they had help in the prisons that would help these individuals restructure the way their brain works, the patterns that they're using, help them try to figure out what life is going to look like when they get out, so that they have a plan. And then gradual, like, there shouldn't be this automatic release back into the real world. There should be like halfway houses where they can ease back into transition.
Yeah.
So they have support while they're, getting their feet wet and experiencing what this new life looks like. It's the same thing like when people go to rehab and get out. It's easy to stay sober in rehab because there's no booze.
Right.
And you're locked up. Okay, it's glorified jail. But you get out and like everything's the same stress, the same everything, and you haven't learned how to live life differently. And so your brain picks up right where it left off.
Exactly. And even with people with mental health issues that were locked up or institutionalized for a while, they would get out and resort to alcohol and or drugs to help cope.
Yeah.
And that's another animal all in itself.
Right. Because they don't have any other tools to cope, and they're not dealing with the patterns that are causing the anxiety.
Right.
And so then they start using alcohol and drugs, and it goes back to our original story. The brain learns that this is a really good way to calm myself. And it doesn't have any other ways to do it. And so it keeps saying, well, let's go do that some more because it worked. And so it keeps giving you cravings to go do the alcohol and the drugs because it knows it's very effective.
Have you ever dealt with anyone that had dual diagnoses of AODA and mental health?
You mean addiction on top of mental health issues?
Yes, sir.
Oh, well, myself. And again, I don't believe that people decide to be addicts for the hell of it, like because it sounds like a good profession or sounds like fun. They're trying to cope with something underneath that they're uncomfortable with, and it could be the way they were raised. It could be some events that they went through, trauma, adverse childhood experiences, the way they were brought up. Maybe they were heavily disciplined. Maybe they grew up without a parent. They don't feel worthy. They don't have attachments. And so they grow up with this, their needs not being met and all the anxiety that comes from that. That's where anxiety stems from. You have some basic needs that the brain is trying to meet, things like, stability and your skillfulness, your competency in life, your autonomy, being able to create your own destiny, your sense of equalness, that you're no more, no less than somebody else. But if those things aren't being met and your brain is trying to meet them, when they aren't met, you feel friction. You feel this churning, the best way I can describe it is friction. And so uncomfortable thoughts, reactive emotions, right? It's like a baby screaming when they have to go to the bathroom or get their diaper changed or they're hungry. So the brain is screaming, my needs aren't being met. And if this goes on and on and on, it develops into full-blown anxiety, chronic stress, it could morph into depression, and you lose hope, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so all the brain, we don't want to experience it. The brain doesn't want to experience it, so it looks for solutions that will calm it down. And as soon as it finds alcohol and drugs, it's the best thing ever because they work so well, and there's nothing else in life that they can find that works as well. Okay, and so I, I'm not going to say 100%, but I got to believe it's not. I don't know the data, but it's got to be 80-90% of the people, maybe more, that become addicted have underlying mental health challenges that they're trying to calm down and regulate. So it's a lot.
Yeah, I agree because as I don't know if I explained to you, but I'm a Marine Corps veteran and I suffer from PTSD.
Right.
When my PTSD symptoms were really out of control, I used alcohol as my way of coping.
Right.
And I didn't drink every day, but when I drank, I drank, and I used alcohol as a way of helping me sleep because of my nightmares. And I was having PTSD nightmares daily. Uh, and I used alcohol as a way to relax me, but it didn't help me.
Yeah,
So
it's momentary, right? Momentary relief.
yeah. So what I thought was helping me was actually becoming another problem.
Right.
So when the light bulb came on, like you need to watch what the hell you're doing because now you're about to have another problem.
Right. Yep.
So I identified that issue and I stopped. And I eventually went and got help.
Yeah, to deal with the underlying root cause of the problem that was leading you. Yeah, so that's exactly what we're saying.
Yes, sir.
Is that absence stepping up like you did, you just keep going down that path of medicating with alcohol or drugs like I did, and then you become addicted, and then it goes into a whole nother realm where your life is destroyed, and so it's so good for you that you were able to recognize that and pull out and deal with the root cause. Takes strength.
It does. Which it saddens me though, George, when I encounter people who, as we mentioned before, they don't want a cure or help. They're totally content with living life how they are living. And I really, and I'm on the outside looking in, so to speak, because it saddens me to see that. And I used to encounter people, like I said, when I was in jail, I've encountered people who were repeat visitors. When before they leave, it's like, we'll keep that bed ready for you when you get back. And part of us is kind of like being truthful. It's like, we're going to keep this bed for you because we know you're going to bring your ass back.
Yeah.
A lot of times they came back.
Yeah. It almost makes you wonder if they feel more safe, like that's the environment in which they know their needs can best be met. And they're going to be calmest, is in that it's almost like they feel home there.
Yeah.
And so, I know it's sad. Everybody kind of has to live life the best way they know how. There's nothing we can do to make someone change. And that's the hard part about addiction is, I knew that I needed to change, and I was being told that I needed to change by people that love me. But until I was ready to change,
Yes, sir.
I mean, you can yell at me all you want. You can tell me I'm all kinds of names, but until I see it myself and I'm willing to do it, the work, nothing else helps.
Indeed. And one thing that helped me too, George, was exercise.
Yep.
uh, so uh, you know, it's said that exercise is good for the body, and it is, but I will contend with you that exercise is also good for the mind,
Yep.
right?
Again, we just discussed that exercise is one of the life's natural
Yeah,
pleasures
yeah,
that can give you the most reward. And it also has a number of other functions. It clears out stress chemicals. It increases circulation, so all the good things that the brain needs always come up through the blood. It delivers, certain proteins. I won't repeat the name because it's really long, but
sure, you don't have to worry.
um, but it comes up into the brain and um, allows you to change better. So it delivers. It's like fertilizer for the brain, and it allows the neuroplasticity of the brain to be more effective. So there's just so many great things about exercise. It's also you can be in community with other people. You get you go work out. You feel like other people are with you. You're all trying to improve yourselves together. There's a lot of community in that. So it satisfies a whole bunch of needs.
Indeed, indeed, man. Well, I've learned a lot in these few minutes of talking with you about rewiring your brain and learning how to change yourself by just changing how you think and change the way you move and change the way that you look at yourself. You know,
Yeah. And how you
because
look at the brain and how you interact with it and
yeah,
partner with it.
yeah,
Because the brain is willing to change with you, but it needs to be shown gently with evidence, with experience over time, lots of repetition. And it needs to find out that this change that you're asking it to do is more rewarding, safe, and less cost than what you're doing now. And so we just have to stick with it. Uh, allow our conscious part of our brain to guide the unconscious part of the brain until everything that we've taught it becomes subconscious. And we just have to wait long enough, give it enough repetition for the thing we want to have happen to then integrate into the back part of the brain where the habits live.
mm-hmm. So, with all the work that you're doing, George, what's next in your journey?
I don't know. I'm going to try to, keep this going. Well, I'm not going to try. I'm going to.
Indeed.
My practice. I may write a book or two. Um, Become more visible out in the world, talking about this stuff. Maybe start. I already have a podcast, but I may start a larger men's group where we get together and talk about mental health issues.
Okay. Okay.
I just want to be out at the forefront, figuring out where I belong, making a difference, telling people what's possible, helping educate them about how their brain works so they stop being overwhelmed by it and intimidated by it. And they recognize that they have a lot of influence over how their minds work. And so then if we can get that across, then I think that change becomes a lot more accessible for people.
Indeed. Indeed. How can people contact you, George?
Yeah, send me an email at george@georgehaymaker.com. My website is George Haymaker, like the punch,
Mhm.
HAYMAKER.com. I'm on YouTube, I'm on LinkedIn, but just reach out. I'm happy to, spend 30 minutes with you at no cost just to talk about what I can help you with.
Indeed. Indeed. Brother George, this has been very educational for me and very helpful because it really, like I said earlier, it really made me understand that that when you said your brain is willing to learn, but you have to tug at it gently. You have to do it gently, and not only gently, you have to be consistent too.
Big time.
Yeah,
So you obviously spent some time in the weight room, right?
a little bit.
Okay. So you don't expect that you're going to go in there and look the way you want to look with one day and doing a few reps, right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so just think about it the same way that, you're on this path, this health journey. You go to the gym because you love it. You go to the gym because you like working with your muscle fibers, and you don't know necessarily what the end goal is. You just know you love being there, and it gets better every day, and it gets more rewarding every day the better things get. The same thing is it works exactly the same way for the brain. But just know that you're on this path, you never get off, and you just have to give the brain enough repetitions doing the right things, and it will begin to grow muscles in that area and stop growing muscles in the areas that you don't touch anymore, that you don't like. Okay. It's very much the same thing. Instead of training muscle fibers, we're training neurons in the brain.
Mm, okay. Very good. Very
All
good.
right.
George Haymaker, it's been a pleasure to take the time to speak with you, my friend, and much success in your work, and much success in your future projects, brother.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. You're a gentle soul, and keep doing the good work you're doing.
I try to be, sir. I really do. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. Remember, everyone, it's okay to not be okay. Just do something about it. With that being said, Mr. George, blessings to you, my friend, and you have yourself a good rest of your evening. Ladies and gentlemen, you do the same.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Have a good one now. Bye-bye.